Time now to find out which were the best and worst performing bourses on the continent last week. And to take us through the numbers, I'm joined in studio by Kuda Kadungure from Securities Africa. Kuda, thank you so much for joining us in studio. Let's take a look at the best and the worst performing, and we start with the best. Southern African countries once again topping the list. Why?
I think mostly we had South Africa at the top, which was tracking the performance that we saw in the US markets. A lot of good news coming out there, especially towards the end of the week. Positive data news, and the rand was firming as well, as the metals are firming, and that sort of translated to the Southern African country currencies. So they sort of just came along for the ride through the currencies.
Well, let's look briefly at Swaziland. Why is the bourse doing so well? Is that purely on the back of what's seen in South Africa?
Well, I mean, it hasn't quite moved as such, but yeah, I'd say that sort of initiative would bring a lot of spotlight, a lot of interest there. If you have South Africa now promoting Swaziland listings, and then eventually that sort of brings it under the WEF, and then there's a lot of opportunities there. You could liquidity is obviously an issue. Yeah. That'll always be the problem, but it certainly will, get its obstacles out of the way.
What is the country's investment opportunity like at the moment?
It's still very limited, I must say. I mean, when we look at it, we're only looking at maybe just the sugar sort of side of it, and that's it really. Yeah.
Worst performing Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Morocco. What were the concerns with Botswana?
Well, Botswana was more just profit taking on some of the financials there. They had, I think, since the beginning of the year, there've been a lot of interest in them. They've been getting bought up. Botswana Insurance Holdings is one of them. Letsego is one of them. So it wouldn't surprise to see them come off slightly. Yeah.
And in Zimbabwe, we're seeing that the government is decommissioning the Hwange power plant. Why are they still mulling over the fact that whether it should carry on or it shouldn't, when there's a great concern of power in the country?
I think the story there is the one they have to understand that there's a great concern, and they'll have to invest in Hwange. That's what
the government will have to invest.
Government doesn't have the money right now. I mean, it's
so who's going to invest?
Somebody has to come in. Yeah. Somebody step in. They have to talk to some, IMF, World Bank, maybe DBSA. I mean, there's a lot of there's funding for those sort of projects. So I think that's where they have to go with it, because when you look at Zimbabwe right now, the industries are supposed to increase the capacity utilization. They're probably operating around 30%, and at current generation levels, that's not gonna, if you cut off Hwange, which apparently is only producing about 40-50 megawatts.
Which is not enough.
Which is not enough as it is. So even just taking that out of the equation, then...
But are donor countries wanting to invest in Zimbabwe? Are they even interested in giving aid to Zimbabwe right now?
Well, I guess it's back to the same story, that what's gonna happen on the political stage. That has to be addressed, of course. I guess that's where we are.
Yeah. So at the moment, is it up and running?
Well, from what I've heard from the last couple of weeks, there have been a lot of power outages. They say it's still up and running, but like as we said, only 40-50 megawatts, which is maybe two plants out of the 6 or something like that. Yeah, that's what we know.
You don't sound very optimistic at all. Well, the recovery of the Hwange power plant hinges on the country's economic growth going forward.
I think it goes hand in hand, because it's obviously going to support production and economic growth in industries operating levels. So it's it's a catch-22.
Yeah. Well, what's the outlook for Zimbabwe going forward for you?
Yeah, well,
from Securities Africa.
Well, we're still very positive on it.
You're still positive, even though they have a private power crisis?
Well, we actually still are. I mean, there's a lot of, well, if you see on the pod, side of it, of course, the guys, there's a lot of load shedding that's happening, and it will affect some industries. Some industries, though, are not. I mean, they have been operating under sort of worse levels, but of course, it does mean higher costs. But still going forward, Zimbabwe are coming from a very, very low base.
Yeah. What's the outlook in terms of its stock exchange for next week? Are you still expecting it to be on the worst performing?
Well, I mean, there's a potential for quite a bit of potential for downside.
You're quite unsure about a lot of things that are going to come to Zimbabwe right now.
Yeah, well, in the short term, Zimbabwe is it's quite a volatile market. Within 2 weeks you can hear this news and this next bit of news. first it was indigenization, and then the power crisis, you know, and so to look at it, say 3 months, a week, one can always sort of say, okay, fine, it will probably close lower. But yeah, I mean, in maybe 2 months' time, they might come to a resolve. You know.
So you never really know exactly where you stand. Okay, I'd like you to stay on because we're going to chat to Benjamin Rafamoyo, CEO of Zimbabwe Electric.